أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajan. The topic that we'll be discussing tonight, inshallah, is the topic of the zuhd and abstinence of our first Imam from the pleasures of this world. When we look at the character of Ali ibn Abi Talib, many times what starts to take over in his story is his braveness and his warrior type of battle on the battlefield. The reality is many of the characteristics that you see from Ali outside of the battlefield and off of the battlefield are more important to his character than what he does on the battlefield. And one might argue that what happens on the battlefield is only a result and a manifestation of the faith that Ali carries in his heart and what he does off of the battlefield. And hence tonight and the following 5 nights, we want to take some time to delve into some of the characteristics that made Ali who he was. Hence the title, Dhulfaqar Sheathed. When the Dhulfaqar is covered, Ali is still that same warrior. He is still that special character that this Prophet spoke so highly of. When you look at the characteristics of Ali ibn Abi Talib, when you look at his wisdom, you go in the world and you speak to the sages of the world and the wise in the world, you will see that they are speaking of the wisdom of Ali. When you go and speak of the brave people in the world, the warriors of the world, you will find the stories of Ali are told in those circles as well. When you hear about the justice of the rulers in the world, you will find the justice of Ali is second to none. And when you find his compassion is mentioned amongst the circles of those who speak of this characteristic. And amongst those characteristics that Ali is remembered for and is mentioned of him is his zuhd and his abstinence from the pleasures of this world. Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into this characteristic of this character of Ali that shines so bright for us in history. And in order to do so, we'll pose the following questions. Number one, when we talk about the concept of zuhd, what is this concept of zuhd? And what are the different elements that it consists of? Number two, was Imam Ali a hard worker? Would he work very hard? And what would he do with the wealth that he used to produce? Did he use this wealth on himself, or did he use this wealth to take the hands of other people and raise them within society? Number three, what are the 5 reasons that Islam encourages you and I to embrace the concept of zuhd? And what is the impact of zuhd on the larger society and on mental health issues? Number 4, when people used to see Qarun come out into public with all of his wealth, with all of his glitz and glamour, What did the people used to say, and what did they used to beg him for? Number 5, which scholar was it who's buried in the shrine of our beloved first Imam, who came from a very wealthy family, and because of that, a certain arrogance lied in his heart. But by the end of his life, he learned from his master, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and this arrogance started to leave his heart. Number 6, how does Imam Ali describe for us the nature of the dunya and what lessons can we learn from that? And number 7, and finally, what are the words of Ali ibn Abi Talib when he speaks to the dunya as if the dunya and the pleasures of this world are a real human being? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 7 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We, of course, live in a world, brothers and sisters, where if they were to ask people around you or yourself, who are the most successful people in the world, chances are, if you were to make a list, the most successful of people are going to be those people who have the most wealth. This is the reality of the matter. If they gave you a list right now, they said, why don't you go ahead and list the most successful people that you know of? You'd probably put in a couple billionaires, you'd probably put in people who are successful from the financial perspective, people who the pleasures of life they delve into, like the celebrities and so on and so forth. This is the reality of the matter. These people, from other aspects of their life, are they successful? Are they not successful? Doesn't seem to matter much when we measure the success of such individuals. This is on one hand. When you come to the prophets and the Ahlul Bayt, on the other hand, you find things are very different. It's a completely different perspective on everything. The majority of them, in fact, struggled from a financial perspective. And even those of them who didn't struggle from a financial perspective, you find that the wealth that they had was never the end-all, be-all for them. And the wealth they had was not what they constantly talked about, what they constantly boasted about, what was taking over their whole perspective and their whole life. There's a clear contrast between the two. You look at the successful people in this world, this is how they are. When you come to our Prophet, all of a sudden you see he's sleeping on pieces of wood that leave marks in his body, as the narration says. When you come to Ali ibn Abi Talib, you find he is a person who says in some of his khutbahs, I have patched up this clothing so much that there's no more room for there to be extra patches on it. I'm embarrassed to take this back to the person who patches my clothing, to give it to him again and ask him to patch it up for me again. It's a clear contrast between these two standards. And that is because Islam, when it came into the picture, introduced a concept known as the concept of Zuhd, abstinence. What does it mean to have abstinence, to have Zuhd? There are certain elements that fall under this concept of Zuhd. Number 1, Zuhd means that in general, you never allow the pleasures of this world, the luxuries of this world, the conveniences of this world to cloud your judgment, to cloud your mind, such that you assume your life here is permanent and you forget about where you're headed. This is the very core of Zuhd. And the way it plays out in your life, and the way you can know whether I have Zuhd or I don't have Zuhd, because if they ask us, all of us will say, no, the pleasures of this life have not clouded my mind. Yes, the pleasures of this world have not clouded my judgment. We'll all say this, but it has indicators. The first indicator is that when it comes to those pleasures that are haram, you keep your distance. When it comes to those pleasures that are even halal, you don't drown yourself in them. You engage with them in a healthy way. And hence, a person who has Zuhd, when you spend time with this person, he will enjoy his life, he will benefit from the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to him. But when you spend time with him, you're not constantly reminded only of the dunya. You're also looking towards the akhirah. Also looking towards the fact that this is temporary. He's not poor, he doesn't necessarily have patches on his clothes. We'll talk about why Ali was like this. Ali was a different thing. But this person, he enjoys life. But this never allows him to assume and live life in such a manner where you might see him and you feel like this is everything that life has to offer. This 50 or 60 or 70 years. Person who has Zuhd, this is how it shows itself. So this is why Ali says in Nahjul Balagha, he says, Az-zahadatu. If you want to have zuhd, you know what zuhd is? Qisarul amal. It's when your hopes and dreams aren't so long that they start to take over your life and make you forget about where you're headed. This is what zuhd is. It's not necessarily about how much someone has. It's about how they engage with what they have. Do they drown themselves in these pleasures 24/7? The discussion in the house is, what house are we going to buy? What car are we going to buy? What vacation are we going to go on? What this, what that? Is it this? Or is there discussion of where we're headed? Is there discussion of an akhirah as well? This is the concept of zuhd. There can be wealthy people, they are zahid. There can be people who are not granted much, and they are also zahid. And the one thing that is definitely not part of the zuhd that we speak of, and I want to be 110% clear about this, is zuhd is not being lazy. Zuhd is not sitting back and saying, yeah, inshallah, God will take care of it. It's okay. Why don't you just chill? This is not zuhd. Because if there's anyone who was a hard worker, it was Ali. Ali worked hard. Ali worked harder than you and I work. How many narrations do we have when people used to come and look for the Ahlul Bayt? Their friends used to tell them, you can't find him. He's not home. He's working on the land. How many times would they used to go to the land? They see them there with a shovel. They're working. And the one thing that's mentioned in multiple narrations is that when they were working, they were sweating profusely. So much so that people used to come say, Yabna Rasulullah, why are you working? You don't need to do this. But Ali was a hard worker. Now the wealth that he produced, did he drown in the pleasures that wealth could bring him? No, that's not what he did, because he had zuhd, but he produced a lot of wealth. And this is why you read Imam as-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says, my great-grandfather, he freed 1,000 slaves min kaddi yadih, from the money he earned with his own hands. Ali worked harder than you and I. So nowhere in this concept of zuhd lies the idea of sit back, be lazy, and yes, say Allah will take care of it, inshallah. This is not part of zuhd. But Islam taught us to have zuhd. Why is zuhd so important, brothers and sisters? Why is it important for you to understand the relationship you have with this dunya? For 5 reasons, these we will go through one by one. Number 1, the first reason why Islam encourages you and I to have zuhd over and over and over again, abstain from the pleasures of this world a little bit, is because this world, at the end of the day, whatever you're trying to gain from it, whatever you're trying to accomplish in this world, the reality is most times you may not be able to achieve your goals the way you want to. This is the reality of the world. You want this house, you want that car, you want this, you want that. But that's not how the world works. Should you strive? Of course, you should strive. You should work hard. But the reality is you may not get your hands on these things necessarily. And hence you sit back and you say, what life is this? A life where I don't get my hands on the things that I want. But a person who has zuhd, a person who knows where he's headed, he doesn't sit back depressed all of a sudden because things aren't going his way. This is very important. The narration says, Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, he says, I was with Imam Ali. And I took this deep breath, this breath of regret. I was tired of how my life was going. Sometimes you don't win in life. Sometimes you try, but it doesn't work out the way you wanted it to work out. He says, I took this deep breath in the presence of Ali. And Ali looked at me and he said, Ya Jabir, ala ma tanafasta. Why do I hear you breathing like this? He sighed, yes? Sometimes you sit by and say, it didn't turn out the way I wanted. He said, ala ma tanafasta ala dunya. You're sad because you didn't get your hands on the dunya, the pleasures of this world? He said, yes, Ya Ali. Some things I wanted them to go my way, they didn't go my way. He said, Jabir, let me tell you something. The pleasures of this world, the peak of them, the pinnacle, there's 7. And all of those 7 have issues in and of themselves. You can strive, it's okay. You can work hard, you can strive. But if you don't get your hands on them, it's no reason to be sad. There's no reason to be depressed. So he started to speak to Jabir of these pleasures. He said, Jabir, let me tell you, the best thing that you can eat, it's honey. That's the sweetest thing you can come across. And you know where honey comes from? It comes from the belly of an insect. This is what you want. This is what you're so sad over. He said, let me tell you, Jabir, the best thing you can drink when you're really, really thirsty, there's nothing that can quench your thirst like water. He said, Baba, water, everyone has access to it. Why are you sad? Everyone can get their hands on water. He said, the best thing that you can ride are horses. وَهِيَ قَوَاتِلْ, and sometimes they might turn around and kill you. Why are you sad all over this stuff? He said, the best thing that you can wear is silk. And that comes from the saliva of another insect. This is what you're so sad over. This is your bar for what your worth is. He continued. He said, the best thing you can hear is ghina. It's haram music. He said, and the problem with that, it's a sin. You'll be held accountable to it. What are you so sad over anyways? This is a reminder for you and I. Ali lived his life in a way, he reminded you and I, this is dunya. Learn to benefit from it and move on. You have a bigger place to go. His things, of course, were very extreme. You and I, when we hear how Ali used to live his life, I promise you, you will look at it and say, this is too extreme. And it is extreme because Ali is setting a bar for thousands of years later. Ali is the standard. That's why he seems extreme to you and I. Because thousands of people will come later, they will look at Ali and learn from him. He has to set that bar high. So the narration says Ali was in the masjid, he was doing i'tikaf. As he was doing i'tikaf, this old man came into the masjid, saw him sitting there with dry bread. Didn't recognize this is the Khalifa. He said, can I have a little bit of your dry bread? Said, yes, take some of my dry bread. He took from the dry, he didn't eat it, he took it, he put it in his pocket. He went to Hassan and Hussein. He said, I heard you all are very generous people. They said, yes, what's happened? He said, I met this old man in the masjid. He had nothing to eat but this dry bread. Maybe you guys can help him out. They said, yeah, that's our father. That's our father. Ali is doing i'tikaf in the masjid. If your imam lived his life like this, does it make sense for you to be sad over, I didn't get my hands on this or I didn't get my hands? It's okay. Strive and work hard towards it. But if it doesn't work out, this is number one. Moving on to number two. Recite a salawat, please. Number two, the second reason why zuhd is so important, keeping your distance from the pleasures of this world in a healthy way, is so important, is because Islam wants to set this as the standard within society. The reality is, in every society, you will find an elite, and then you will find the masses. The reality is, those masses, most of the time, will never reach the level or the lifestyle of the elite. And Islam wants to make it a point that the elite do not idolize wealth. And they do not idolize the glitz and the glamour. Even if you benefit from it, you're not allowed to idolize it. Why? Because this builds a sense of inferiority within the masses. You want to see this clearly? Look at the society we have today. The society we have today is a very clear indication of this. These celebrities come, and then you see the people. They are salivating to have what this celebrity has. Why do you think the headlines are around and about the celebrities? Because people look at that lifestyle. It's idolized, the glitz, the glamour. Say, I wish I had this. And the Quran says when Qarun used to come amongst his people, it was the same exact thing. فَخَرَجَ عَلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ فِي زِينَتِهِ. When he used to come amongst his people with his entourage, with all the glitz and the glamour, with the long dresses and the long clothing, and yes, all of this stuff, the people used to say, قَالَ الَّذِينَ يُرِيدُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا يَا لَيْتَ لَنَا مِثْلَ مَا أُوتِيَ قَارُونَ. I wish I had what Qarun had. You idolize it in society? This is what happens. And people have a sense of inferiority that unless I live that lifestyle, my life is not worth much. And this over time leads to a point, especially when it happens at younger ages, it leads to a point where this young man or this young woman, now all of a sudden, one of the reasons he might be dealing with depression is because he sees his life, what worth does this life have anyways? If I can't get there, because he knows there's a good chance he may not be able to get there ever in his life, and he's correct. So what worth is his life anyways? Go around, ask the average young man today, what does his perfect life look like? He'll describe something that includes the type of wealth and the type of attention and the type of fame that most probably he will never achieve in his life. Not everyone is going to be famous in this life. I hope that's pretty clear for us, yes? You ask this young woman, she'll say, yes, I want to be like this celebrity, I want to have this beauty, this, that attention, the spotlight, all of this kind of stuff. Okay, well, you can't have this because it may not necessarily happen for you. So what's the point of life then? He wonders, she wonders. And if someone took their life, God forbid, would they be in the wrong if they really were told this is everything that life has to offer, and you will never have the opportunity to gain access to that lifestyle? When it's idolized, this is what happens. What did Ali do? Ali came into society. He said, we're not idolizing this. So the narration says they brought him halwa, they brought him sweets. When they brought him the sweets, the narration says he opened these sweets and it looked wonderful. And he started to speak to the halwa itself. And he said, listen, I look at you, you have wonderful colors. And I'm sure your taste and your flavor is amazing too. But I will not let Ali taste anything from you. Because within the lands that I have authority over, I am sure there are others who are going to sleep hungry tonight. And let them know that their imam will also go to sleep hungry tonight, just like them. So that this person doesn't wake up the next morning feeling inferior that he doesn't have as much as other people have. The more you represent the faith, the more this zuhd is supposed to present itself in your life. If you represent the faith a little bit, it's supposed to represent a little bit in your life. Alhamdulillah, we have speakers nowadays, their watch can pay rent for a couple families back home. This is a thing. The more you represent the faith, the more zuhd is supposed to present itself in your life. You look at someone like a marja, then all of a sudden the zuhd needs to show itself in his life. This is the contrast you find when the Pope came to visit Ayatollah Sistani. You saw this contrast. The Pope came from a place like a palace. All of a sudden, he's finding his way in the alleys of Najaf. When you're walking through the alleys of Najaf, are you reminded of the glitz and glamour of this world, or are you reminded that this is a temporary place of living? You're reminded that this is a temporary place of living. Now, could the alley look better, so on and so forth? Yeah. But when you represent the faith, you have to do what? Zuhd has to show itself more in your life. And then when Ayatollah Sistani writes a line and says your country is in need of defending it, then yes, people will give their lives for this person. Versus a person who's already drowning in the pleasures of this world, then he can write whatever he wants to write. People are not going to give their lives to this person. So Ali ibn Abi Talib had this type of seerah. The narration of the fifth Imam, Imam al-Baqir, salawatullahi wassalamu alayhi. He says, this is why your master, your imam, when they say that, they mean Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, this is why your master used to sit like the servants, he used to eat like the servants. He used to give to other people bread and meat. And then he would go to the corner of his house, open the little package he had for his own food, and in there was no trace of meat. There was bread and some oil and some vinegar. And that was the food of Ali. And he says when he had his clothing, if his clothing went beyond his fingers, he would cut the rest and use it for something else. And if his clothing from his feet went beyond his ankles, he would cut it. He would use it for something else. Especially because back in the day, if you're rich and wealthy, your clothing would drag behind you. This was part of the glitz and glamour. So this is how your imam used to live. Suwayd ibn Ghafala says, I came to Ali ibn Abi Talib in the afternoon. I came to his house. I saw him sitting in the house. He had some milk in front of him, and on the side, he had some hard, dry bread. And in this bread, I could see the pieces of barley. Back in the day, if you were wealthy, you wouldn't eat bread from barley. You would eat bread from wheat, fine wheat. Wheat that's sifted through, yes? So that only it's fine wheat that remains, and when they make the bread with it. It says, I saw him eating bread made of barley. And the pieces of barley, you could see it in the bread from far away. And I saw Ali is breaking this bread with all of his strength. That's how dry it was. And when he couldn't, he would use his knees to break this bread. He says, as I was watching this, he turned to me. He said, please come and eat with us. Zuhd says, I told him, I'm fasting today, I can't. He said, good for you. You're fasting outside of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you even more. Then as I was watching this, I got very frustrated. I turned to his servant Fidda in the house. I said, Ya Fiddatu, ala tattaqeen Allah fi hada shaykh? Don't you fear God? This is how you're feeding this old man? Fidda said, I've tried. He doesn't let me. Doesn't let me. Ali heard I was talking to Fidda. He said, what are you telling Fidda? He said, this is what I told her. This type of food, you live in Iraq now. You're Khalifa now. This is not how you're supposed to live your life. He said, Bi-abi wa ummi. May I give my life for the one who never ate from bread that was made from flour of wheat. Who's he talking about? He's talking about his teacher, the prophets. He said, this is not who I am. This is extreme because Ali is setting a bar for thousands of years to come. Ali is like that north star that you see in the sky. The north star, what is it there for? It shows you the direction. It's so far from you, even if you walk for days and nights and months, you'll never reach the star. But the star is there to show you where to go. Ali is like that. He is there in the sky. You look at him, you say, my Mawla was like this, my master was like this. This is how I'm supposed to live my life. Yes, you and I will never even reach what Ali used to do. But he is that north star in the sky so that you know what he idealized and what he idolized and what was important for him. This is reason number 2. It doesn't create a sense of inferiority amongst the less fortunate within society. Number 3, the reason why Islam encourages zuhd is because with this zuhd, with keeping a little bit of a healthy distance from the pleasures of this world, the arrogance never grows in the heart of this person. One of the ways that arrogance grows in the heart of this person is when he's drowned in the pleasures of this world. So one of the students of Ali, one of the scholars who was inspired by the presence of Ali in Najaf, his name was Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Hussein Gharawi Isfahani, also known as Ayatollah Kumpani. Came from a very wealthy background. His father, very wealthy. He himself decided to become an alim, became a scholar, great scholar. His friend says, I saw him one day in the bookstores behind the haram. There's a bazaar, it's called Bazaar of Huwaish. They still sell books there. It says, I saw him there, and with him he had a bunch of onions. These onions have fallen on the ground. He had them in the bag. It was torn apart, fallen on the ground. And I saw him picking up these onions, smiling. I said, why are you smiling? Started to pick them up with him. When they ended, he said, let me tell you why I was smiling. He said, the reason why I was smiling is because when I came to Najaf to start my studies, I was very wealthy, came from a very wealthy family. Because of that, there was some arrogance in my heart. This doesn't always happen. Sometimes with wealth, it can happen. He said, I had wealth, and because of that, I had this arrogance in my heart. I was standing once in the courtyard of Ali ibn Abi Talib with my tasbih. My tasbih was worth a lot. That's how wealthy I was. My tasbih, as I was going one by one, it broke. The pieces of the tasbih fell in the courtyard. People came, they were standing and waiting for me to see what I was going to do because every one of these pieces was worth money. But because of my arrogance, I didn't even bow down to pick up any of them. I said, no, 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 I'm just going to stand here. He said, people came to me, looked at me. I said, if you want to take them, go ahead. People took them. He said, years later, today I was walking with a bag of onions in this bookstore. The bag of onions, it tore apart. The onions fell on the ground. And all of a sudden I saw it's so easy for me to get down on my knees and pick up these onions one by one. He said, this is why I'm smiling. This is the work of Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is how Ali used to live his life. This is number 3. Number 4, the fourth reason why Islam pushes us to have abstinence is because this world will bring a greed into your heart. No matter what you gain from it, it will never satiate you. You will never be happy with it. And so Ali writes in his letters to Muawiyah, la'natullahi alayhi, he says, Muawiyah, let me tell you about something. Everything that you gain from the dunya, it opens another door for you to want something else from this dunya. It never ends. That's why the Quran says, وَتَكَاثُرٌ. You'll reach a point in life where it's constantly just about what else can I have? What else can I get my hands on? This is how the world works. Some of the younger people here, they don't understand yet. You thinking right now, if I can just get my first job, my first car, my first house, you get this stuff. 2 decades into your career, then all of a sudden you see, I still want everything. I thought I would be happy with the basics. No, I'm not happy with the basics. This is number 4. Number 5, the reason why Islam teaches us to have zuhd is because a person who has zuhd, this person becomes generous. Why? Because he doesn't see this world as the end-all be-all. So if you come and ask him, come and help this poor person who needs your help, it's easy for him to put a hand in his pocket and give. You and I, when they ask you and I with all of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted to us, then all of a sudden you'll see. Sometimes you'll be surprised by yourself. I'll be surprised by myself. Say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted me so much. This small amount I want to give, all of a sudden, my hands are shaking. This is me, I speak of myself. No, you have zuhd, then all of a sudden this becomes a generous person. And so Ali described the nature of this dunya for us. This is the biggest lesson to learn from the character of Ali. When you understand that this world is temporary, if it's not going your way, you don't get down, you don't get depressed. If it is going your way, you remember there's an akhirah, you will be held accountable. You won't drown yourself in the pleasures of this world. They asked Ali, they said, Ya Ali, why don't you describe this world for us? Sif lana dunya. Describe this world for us. And Ali said, Ma asifu min darin. How should I describe a world for you? Awwaluha ana wa akhiruha fana. How should I describe a house for you and a place of residence for you that the beginning of it is full of difficulties? And when you finally get to the end, akhiruha fana, it all perishes. What do I tell you about the dunya? Fi halalha hisab. When you gain something halal, they'll ask you about it. How did you get this? Where did you get it from? How did you spend it? All of it. Wa fi haramha iqab. If you did it the wrong way, then you're going to be held accountable. What is this dunya? Then he said 2 lines. He said, let me tell you how you're supposed to treat the dunya. He said, وَمَنْ أَبْصَرَ عَنْهَا بَصَّرَتُهُ. This line is very beautiful. He said, whoever looks at the dunya and then looks away from it, أَبْصَرَ عَنْهَا, he looks away from it, he looks beyond it, he looks through the dunya. Whoever's sight goes beyond the dunya, بَصَّرَتُهُ, the dunya will give him insight and wisdom. Because he will know where he's headed. And he said, وَمَنْ أَبْصَرَ إِلَيْهَا. But the one who lives his life in this world and his sight is fixated on the dunya, he doesn't see beyond the dunya, he doesn't see anything else coming. أَعْمَدْهُ, the dunya will take his sight away from him. The dunya will blind him. This is how you treat the dunya. And hence Ali has said words no other human being has ever dared to say. Words where he addresses the dunya, it's poetic words. These words are powerful in the wording that they have. They are powerful in the meaning that they have. He speaks to the dunya as if the dunya is a real human being. You and I won't understand what these words of Ali are. But this is a man who's defeated the dunya. No other human being can speak like this outside of our prophets. No one else can speak like this. So in some of the letters that he wrote to his companions and to the governors that he had appointed, he said, let me teach you how I approach the dunya. And he starts to speak to the dunya as if the dunya is a human being. He said, Ya dunya, ilayki anni, O dunya, keep your distance from me. فَحَبْلُكِ عَلَى غَارِبِكِ, I'm throwing your reins back to yourself. I don't want any piece of you. قَدْ انْسَلَلْتُ مِنْ مَخَالِبِكِ, I have been freed from your claws. You came after me. When is Ali saying this? Ali is saying this when he is Khalifa now. When all of the wealth of the world is coming his way. And Ali says, قَدْ انْسَلَلْتُ مِنْ مَخَالِبِكِ, I ran away from your claws. وَأَفْلَتْتُ مِنْ حَبَائِلِكِ, and I was able to free myself from the ropes that you throw and you pull people in. وَاجْتَنَبْتُ الذِّهَابِ فِي مَدَاحِذِكِ, where you told me to go, I didn't go there. And then Ali says, أَيْنَ الْغُرُونُ الَّذِينَ فَتَنْتِهِمْ بِزَخَارِفِكِ, where are all those generations that you promised them they would live in this world forever? You tricked them. Where are they? أَيْنَ الْأُمَمَ الَّذِينَ غَرَرْتِهِمْ بِمَدَاعِبِكِ, where are the nations that you tricked with your beauties and adornments? No one can speak to the dunya like this except Ali. And then he answers, he says, let me tell you where they all are. هَا هُمْ رَهَائِنُ الْقُبُورِ وَمَضَامِينُ الْلُحُودِ, I will tell you where they are. They're stuck in their graves now. This is the promise you gave them. You tell them they're going to live here forever. Now where are they? They're in the graves. وَمَضَامِينُ الْلُحُودِ, they're stuck with the stone of lahad that is above them. I'm not falling for you. Only Ali can speak like this. He said, أُعْزُبِ عَنِّي, keep your distance from me, get away from me. وَأَيْمُ اللَّهِ يَمِينًا, and I swear, لَأَرُوذَنَّ نَفْسِي رِيَاضَةً, I will discipline myself in such a way, in my nafs in such a way, تَهِشُّ بِهَا إِلَى الْغُرْسِ, that it will be okay with one loaf of bread as its food for the whole day. وَتَقْنَعُ بِالْمِلْحِ مَأْدُومًا, and it will learn to be okay with salt as the stew of its food. You all have stew as your food, yes, but Ali is on a different level. Ali is something else because he's that North Star. This is not what he expects from you and I. He expects from you and I the haram pleasures. We keep a distance from them. And this is why on a night like this, when Ali ibn Abi Talib is struck on the head in his sajda, Jibreel calls out, Wallah tahaddamat arkanul huda. The pillars of guidance, the pillars of faith are now falling down. Because someone like Ali ibn Abi Talib is now falling on the ground on a night like this. The narration says as it came closer and closer to those final days that Ali was living his life, all of a sudden his behavior was different. His walking, his talking was different. Ali is not the same Ali that he used to be. He's seen too much from the difficulties and the pains of this world. He's seen too much of the injustices of this world. He's seen too much of the betrayals of his people. He walks in Kufa and no one responds to his salam anymore. The narration says he came to the house of Kulthum on one of those final nights, and he told Kulthum, he said, Kulthum, my daughter, know that these are the final moments I am spending time with you. Imagine what went through the hearts of the daughter of Ali during those moments. She turned to her father. She said, why, my father Ali, why do you say this? Why are you leaving us by ourselves in these moments? And Ali said, let me tell you something. I had a dream, and in that dream I saw the Prophet. He was wiping dirt from my face, as if to say, Ya Ali, you've been through enough. You've been through enough masa'ib. You've been through enough difficulties. You've been through enough pain. La alayk, don't worry Ali, you're coming back to us now. And I knew that the time of my death has come. What masa'ib is Ali talking about? Ali is talking about those masa'ib when he buried the body of Fatima in the grave, and then he turned to the grave of the Prophet. He said, Ya Rasulullah, this is that amanah that you were waiting for so long. Here is the daughter of yours that you were waiting for so long. The words of Ali when he was burying Fatima are so full of pain and agony. Maybe it was these masa'ib that the Prophet was talking about. The narration says Ali turned to his daughter. He said, Kulthum, these are my final days, my final moments. He would go out that night, during the nighttime, on a night like this. He would look at the skies and then he would come back. He would go back and look at the skies and he would say, by Allah, the Prophet who gave me the promise of this night, he did not lie when he said I would be martyred on a night like this. The narration says on that final night, Ali started to make his way towards the masjid. And all of a sudden, the animals that they had in the house, the ducks and the chickens, they started to cry out. And Ali turned to his family. He said, they all know what's going to happen today. They all know what lies ahead of Ali today. The narration says he made his way out of the house, and as he was heading out, his belt got caught up on the door, and he knew even the door is asking him not to go in those moments. He made his way to the masjid. Everyone is sleeping. He gave the adhan, and then with that compassion that Ali had, he started to go around and wake up people one by one, and amongst them his own killer, Ibn Muljam. He waked up Ibn Muljam in the middle of the night. Wake up, it's time for Fajr. As Ali comes to start his prayer, and all of a sudden as he continues with his prayer, Ibn Muljam gets up and strikes Ali on the head, and blood is everywhere. And the narration says everyone was running to help Ali in those moments, except Ali was talking to his Lord. He was talking to God. He said, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. I give my life in the name of Allah. Fuztu wa Rabbil Kaaba. I did my job. I was successful in this life. As the blood was going everywhere, the narration says Hassan and Hussein, they rushed to gather Ali ibn Abi Talib. They picked him up, and all of a sudden this warrior, this man who was so strong, all of a sudden Ali can't even walk on his own feet. The narration says they slowly started to drag Ali towards his house. What went through the heart of Zainab and Kulthum when they saw their strong warrior, this strong father in those moments? Barely he can walk with his own feet. Blood all over his body. Maybe Zainab came to wipe a little bit of this body, this blood from the face of Ali. Maybe Kulthum came to put a little bit of comfort in the hearts of Ali. But Ali knows where he is headed. He is headed to see the Prophet. He is headed more than anyone else to go and see Fatima, who he has missed for so long. How many nights Ali has gone to sleep without Fatima? How many nights has he wanted to be with Fatima? But the hands of oppression took the hands of Fatima away from him, and the love of Fatima away from him. Imagine when he comes into that house, the man who used to take care of all of the orphans, now he has orphans of his own. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب